Hello, Internet. Gino, that Pinguino Greco here again with another episode of Deep Listens, and today we are going to be talking about Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, and I'm excited to be joined today by Billy Refrigerator Rothert.
I do think I'm pretty cool, and I frequently provide snacks for everyone, so this just makes everything perfect. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm really happy to be talking about a game that is near and dear to my childhood heart. Though I'll say I actually appreciated it a little bit more on this playthrough than I did when I was a kid.
And we are also joined, as always, by Peter Exploding Snowman Busby.
I will take that. An exploding snowman is, as everybody knows, the best kind of snowman. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. I will say, up there with Fire Emblem, the Kirby games, probably one of my favorite series of all time. I've always been a big fan. Animal fact for today, I got you a twofer. The first one I'll just throw out there. So iguanas, third eye on top of their head. It can't produce images, really just senses changes in light. So if a bird flies overhead, they can tell. Yeah. There's an iguana fact. Here's an ant one. So this one comes from E.O. Wilson's famous Pulitzer Prize-winning book, The Ants. It's from 1990, so this fact might be out of date, but I don't know how he calculated it in the first place anyway, so I don't think that really makes a difference. But he, renowned ant expert, calculated that there are on the order of 10 quadrillion ants on the planet at any given moment. So just to put that in perspective, that's 1.4 million ants per person.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So if they ever decided to just rise up and eat all of us, it would take like 20 minutes.
It would take very little effort.
Yeah, nothing. Like 1.4 million ants could absolutely eat a person.
Now, I have two objections here. One, exploding snowmans are... I think they're great, but they're not always great. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay,
There's an existential case where they're not always great. Case in point, Mario Kart 64.
Oh, I thought you were going to say case in point if you're near an exploding snowman in real life.
Yeah, or like when children enjoying the snow. But
no. That they're still great then, but Mario Kart 64 exploding snowmen, bane of all humanity. Okay, and then I feel like Billy versus 1.4 million ants, I've got a really good shot.
I disagree.
Maybe it might depend on the kind of ant.
Now, are they counting
ants
all kinds of ants? Because I think the carpenter ants, they like explode like
you don't
acid
need
on
that many
themselves?
carpenter ants to kill a Billy. I think like 20 to 30 carpenter ants are probably too much for you.
What? I'm logging
Carpenter
out.
ants are fucked up.
This is the last.
They've got really
podcast.
sharp jowls. You don't want to fuck with them.
I've got
mandibles.
I've got boots.
Really sharp mandibles.
Yeah, mandibles. Sure, I don't know about jowls.
Am I allowed to like craft weapons? I don't need like a flamethrower, but like can I like kind of like sharpen a spear?
Preemptive. You have enough time when you see the carpenter ants coming.
All right, then I can improvise, right?
Yeah.
It's going to come out of nowhere, and I got to just improvise whatever from my surroundings. Yeah, I'll take that because they have the exact same rules apply to them. They could improvise tiny weapons if they wanted to. Now, but here's the thing. Here's what actually might kill me. If they can lift with like 50 times their weight or something, they all just got pebbles and just threw them off a cliff at me. That might actually. They might be able to get the jump on me like that.
I think that the real trick would be one of them biting you like on the ankle, and then you go down like, oh no, my ankle, and then one like jumps off the back of another and just gets you right in the eye.
My thought was they all go for his throat and just choke him with their dying ant bodies.
That would work.
But I don't know if they're that clever.
Carpenter ants, they definitely don't have a lot of regard for their own well-being. They get the job done.
There is Zerg Rush waiting to happen.
Well, speaking of carpenter ants, we've got feedback, and some of it was animal-related. So if you want to get in touch with the show, deeplistens.libsyn.com, deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com, or @deeplistenspod on Twitter, and you can sound something like this. This comes from Sean. First off, huge fan of the show. I've been
Hey,
Thanks,
I've been
Sean.
listening since
Good opening.
being moved by Gino's evangelism from Magic Pendule on Hardcore Gaming 101's podcast. Magic Pendule speaks to the people. It's a game for the people.
It does.
I love the Little Nightmares episode, but I was a little disappointed by the missed opportunity for facts about the tarsier, a small, endangered, and adorable primate found in Southeast Asia. So here are a few facts for use at your discretion. Tarsiers are the only
Absolutely.
living primates that are entirely carnivorous, eating primarily insects, but also snakes, bats, lizards, and birds, and it catches prey by leaping onto it from a distance of up to 15 feet away.
That is terrifying.
Tarsiers have the largest eye-to-body ratio of any mammal, with eyes comparable in size to their brains. As their eyes do not rotate in the sockets, tarsiers must instead rotate their heads like an owl. They can rotate their necks a full 180 degrees in either direction. I have included a photo for your scientific assessment. Please keep up the great work on the most interesting video game podcast of all time. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Let me just...
That was
Quick,
quality.
just show you
Quick
this
question.
picture.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
it's as
see the
terrifying as I
picture.
expected.
It looks like a bush baby, but a bush baby that only knows how to kill.
With like the creepiest fingers I've ever seen in my life, I think. Clearly for
Yep.
killing its prey.
Sorry, what's the connection to Little Nightmares? Is it because this creature is itself a little nightmare?
I think that, and also it's 100% carnivorous, only eating meat. Or that we use
interesting.
animal facts all the time, and, you know, anytime we don't use a cool animal fact is a missed opportunity.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
also look out for new animals.
So there's one bit of feedback. We also have a little bit of feedback for our Final
back.
Fantasy trading
Drop
card
back.
game episode. This comes from Kristen on our YouTube comments. We actually have YouTube comments, so if you want to use that, I do pay attention. Saying, hilarious and informative, came here for the Final Fantasy trading card game talk and stayed for the witty banter. Have to agree with Gino. This game is awesome, very well explained and defended, sir. I just wanted to call that out because ZP is wrong about the Final Fantasy trading card game, and everyone knows it. So, with that out of the way, time to bring up the Giant Bomb Community Endurance Run again. It is rapidly approaching April 20th. We are trying to raise $7,500 for Pencils of Promise, a charity that builds schools, trains teachers, and sends kids to school in developing nations. Why $7,500, you may ask? Well, that is because it costs $75 to educate a student for a year. That is with supplies and with tuition. So, 75 times 100 equals 7,500. So we are trying to send 100 kids to school for a year. That is the goal. I think it is a noble one, and you can help out. Now, ways you can do so. You can go to fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GBCERVIII because we are Roman numeral focused. You can go ahead and go there. We have a bunch of team members that you can donate to individually. You can also just donate to the Community Endurance Run as a team, you know, to the central team. But really, you want to go to the Gino page and donate. Or if you want to donate to some other people you know of, you know, we've got Chris Zombie Pod Redacted on there. We got Pete, Billy, you're going to be on there. We have a number of other members of the community who you may have heard on our GBCR podcast. And if you go ahead and donate, it's to a good cause. We've got a lot of cool things coming up. Just some reminders for this show. People who donate and include games that you want us to play for the show, the person who donates the most and mentions a game, we will play that game.
Quick clarification there, Gino. Can that be on any one of our pages?
Yes, as long as it is on one of our pages and with a comment saying, you know, deep listens, and then give us play this game.
Play this game. Yeah.
Just let us know.
I just want to add something really quick. I mentioned that some of my donation incentives can stack. You can just add that to any of my donations. So if you want to like tip for like an NPC like an NPC kill, you can just be like, P.S. Deep listens, play this. I'll just like you can stack that, combo that
Same
with
thing.
any of my
If
donations.
you want Pete to study some sort of terrible thing, right now you're going to have to learn. You're going to have to critically look at My Immortal, a Harry Potter fan fiction, and bring that to our Guitars of War segment.
Oh, I'm very much ready for it. I think there will be some interesting authorship issues to bring to bear.
As someone who's read several chapters of My Immortal, you're going to have a great time. And if you wanted to donate to my page and give us more terrible things for me and ZP to do while we're playing Final Fantasy XIII, you could do so. So thank you, and remember, fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GBCERVIII. Coming up April 20th to 22nd. And now, without further ado, time for Kirby. Yay! Billy, tell me about Kirby. 64, the Crystal Shards.
All right, so this is a classic game. It was released in the States in summer of 2000. So one of the hot new Nintendo titles of the new millennia. Kirby, the Crystal Shards, takes place in the same general universe as the other Kirby games. Kirby is if you don't know, is a round pink ball figure that lives on a star called, I believe it's called Planet Popstar.
It's Dreamland, but they call it like Planet Popstar or something in this game.
Yeah. So anyway, the story doesn't take place there necessarily. Let's shift focus to a place called Ripple Star, a very friendly, nearby location in the same universe. Ripple Star is inhabited by these fairy creatures, and the planet enjoys peace, prosperity, and protection thanks to this massive crystal that houses some sort of awesome, cool, good power. Well, that crystal attracts the attention of a evil entity known as dark matter.
Gotta watch out for dark matter.
It's everywhere.
It actually is. There's some cool shit about dark matter, but it's not quite as cool as this bad guy, dark matter. So dark matter wants to gain control of this crystal and use it for whatever dark matter's evil agenda is. Yeah, to use it.
It's
for
a
dark
giant
matter
ball
stuff.
with an evil eye. It's up to no good.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to know anything else besides that.
Well, the queen of Ripple Star dispatches one of her most trusted fairies named Ribbon to make haste and leave with the giant crystal. She kind of hops on the back of it like a rocket and flies away with it. However, dark matter attacks her, shattering the crystal into 74 shards that just get sort of sprinkled around the neighboring stars and planets in the universe. And then Ribbon meets up with Kirby, who finds one of these crystals and says, hey, I'll help you, collect them all, and then we'll go kill this dark matter guy. And that's how Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, begins.
Yes. And Kirby the Crystal...
Did I miss anything major? I think that was pretty much it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was only going to say, I don't think it happens that late game. King DDD on your side in this one. He's
King
a good
DDD,
guy.
Kirby is joined by a few companions. They are all introduced in the first levels of the game. First, there is a Waddle Dee, the little kind of monkey-looking dudes who are like Kirby. You are joined by an artist, a starving artist. I don't know his name. I assume it's Picasso.
It's female.
Oh, really?
And her name is Adeline, but is referred to as Ado, I believe, just by the general community. I'm not quite sure, but I believe it is a female character named Adeline, according to some wiki that I read earlier.
So Adeline joins you, and then there is King Dedede. And each of those characters join you in the first few levels. They each come across a crystal shard and then get possessed by dark matter temporarily. So Waddle Dee becomes a Waddle Doo, and then you have to defeat him, and then he comes to his senses and joins your team. Adeline starts painting bad, evil things, and you have to kill them, and then you fight King Dedede, and then he joins you. And then you just bounce around between these stars that are very specifically like, here's the fire level, here's the earth level, here's the ice level, and until you reach the final star, which is, here's where all the bad stuff happens. But the big feature that is present in this specific Kirby game is the ability to combine powers. In this Kirby game, you can eat enemies just like in most Kirby games, and you gain powers based on what you eat. But you can also take one of your powers. If you eat two enemies that give you a power at the same time, they will combine and make a combined power for Kirby. Or you can eat a single enemy and then kind of barf up their power in the form of a star, and then you can hurl it at another enemy. And if they also contain a power, the star will fuse into a fused power. So some examples, you can get Cutter, which is pretty normal. Kirby just kind of throws a cutter out. Except in this game, he throws his face.
Yeah.
I can just list them all because I've got the whole
So what
list.
are the base powers?
Base powers are Cutter, Spark, Bomb, Needle, Ice, Stone, and Fire. Or they call it Burning, but it's basically fire. So there's seven of those base powers, and then there's pick any two, which creates 49 more powers, total of 56 combinations altogether if you include the singleton powers and all the duos.
Yeah. And so there are a lot of powers in this game. Some of them very ineffective, some of them very powerful.
Some of them just awful.
So I think individual levels in this game aren't that interesting, I don't think. There's a few that jump out here and there, but for the most part it's the powers that I think separate this Kirby game. What powers did you guys like the most?
So the singleton power, power just by itself was, I'll say this, one that I used the most for killing things.
Yeah, I think fire the best of the starter powers. It's a little odd because a lot of the basic powers really feel similar. Like ice, needle, electricity, rock, those all pretty much just kill anything that's in your close proximity. And Kirby's basically immobile or very, very slow when using the power. Like electricity creates a field of electricity around you. Kirby can slowly move left to right. Needle bursts needles out of you. You can't move when that's happening, but it will kill everything slightly further away than like electricity. Rock, you turn into a rock and you will roll until you stop, and then Kirby will be able to get up and walk as a rock Kirby. But if you make contact with anything, it dies. And then ice, you kind of twirl around shooting ice in left and right, so you're not shooting up quite as much as you are with all these other powers, but basically if you get close to something, it dies. So 4 of the 7 base powers are very, very similar.
Yeah, I'd say fire, cutter, and bomb are the ones that are the most different here. Bomb's probably the best. Sorry, cutter's probably the best ranged one. Fire offers mobility. Quick side note here. Well, actually, I'll say this real quick. So I said the power that I used the most for killing things, if I had just a singleton power, was fire. One that I enjoyed the most aesthetically was lightning, because the way he generates it is by rubbing his little hands on his head to create static.
Yeah.
His little nubs.
Yeah, that's adorable.
That's great. And just quick side note, when you are speedrunning this game, fire is almost exclusively what speedrunners are going to try to use.
Makes sense.
The way just a simple mechanic works is if you jump in the air and you hit fire, you just move perfectly horizontally without losing any altitude in a little fireball. But if you cancel it with your little puff attack, not your jump, but your breath puff attack, you can just fireball again almost indefinitely, and you drop 1 or 2 pixels the whole time. But you can just jump pretty high and then just fly over the entire level and go straight to the end.
There's a lot of that sort of stuff. It seems like fire is the only one for speedrunning. Like a lot of the other powers I found were either finicky or, killing enemies is not that hard in this game. When the combined powers, they're interesting and you're basically just styling on fools, but there's no specific reason why, I really need this power or I really need this one. There's some that are just wildly ineffective, but largely it's how do you want to deal with these problems.
My last note on the speedrunning thing was I get why fireball is used, but I'm surprised why ice skating isn't used more, because it's technically a little bit faster than fireball, I think, but it's obviously way harder because fireball you're just flying over the whole level. Maybe it's more brain dead, so it's easier for the runners, but I guess if you were perfectly routed it, maybe ice skating is actually faster.
It's just a fun power too. I mean, that was one of the ones I enjoyed using the most.
I think it was not very good at combat necessarily, but it was hella fun.
I think combat effectiveness, the one I used the most was the exploding shuriken.
Yes, I think bomb plus cutter.
Yeah, Kirby launches, and they're cool because they're instant. Kirby just throws this thing, and then instantly the enemy stops. It has a shuriken in its forehead, and then it explodes. And like the fact that there's no travel time, he just launches them out, and it's basically an insta-kill. I mean,
It's like a hit scan.
Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, it's the best one, at least for combat, and I think probably an aesthetic perspective.
Yeah, this game has a lot of things realizing they're dead and then dying for a Kirby game. Like the needle ones, enemies get stuck and they're just like looking at their faces go white and then they explode a few seconds later.
It's like the old like sort of samurai movie trope where the enemy doesn't die until the guy sheaths his sword. It's sort of the same thing, but like it's weird when it's Kirby.
Yeah,
doing
I really
it.
love. So most of the basic powers you can get combinations with the basic powers. So basic power plus the same basic power will just get you more of whatever the base thing was. So if you combine cutter with cutter, regular cutter is like a little boomerang. Cutter plus cutter is this giant bladed boomerang that takes up like half the screen. Needle plus needle might be my favorite of the base power combinations because regular needle, it's just like Kirby's. The spines are just made of, Kirby pink goop stuff. But when you combine it, needle plus needle, just a bunch of spiky things shoot out of Kirby, like a protractor, a cactus, a bee butt.
A protractor's not spiky, sorry.
Sorry,
of a compass.
Just like all of the, like a bottle opener, just whatever you want.
Kirby just Swiss Army knives.
Yeah. And it's great.
So opens all the things.
Mostly faces. Billy, what was your favorite power? You said fire was your favorite basic power. What about combinations?
Well, I think my favorite basic power is lightning for the aesthetic purposes. And then I just ended up using fire as my singleton power for the effectiveness of killing things if I had one power. So again, you got to separate this into categories of what's actually good and what was really fun. So I think my favorite powers were, I think if you combine stone and fire, you get a volcano that can shoot little fire bombs at people, like a little machine gun turret. That one is particularly effective, especially if you can get underneath of something. I liked the stone and electricity, which basically yo-yos a boulder around, and it kind of that one was really good. Fire and cutter is really good because it's a big flaming sword.
You can throw.
That you can also throw, so it's with the best melee weapon and a reasonable ranged weapon. And though I didn't use it that much, but we got to shout out the double-bladed laser sword that is lightning and cutter, a la Darth Maul.
Very
from
clearly
Star
the
Wars.
Phantom Menace had come out, or trailers from it had come out, because you have just a double-bladed lightsaber, and Kirby does the twirly attack. It's great. For me, I think I agree, Pete, with the effectiveness of the exploding shuriken. It's just so good. I really like cutter plus rock, which causes Kirby to cut a rock into a sculpture of one of the different animals from the earlier Kirby games that Kirby can ride. And depending on which one you get, some of them are really ineffective, like his little, I think it's a hamster or a rat named Rick or something. He's not that good.
Yeah,
he just jumps once. He's really slow. You can also get a cat that can triple jump. That one's okay because you're almost as mobile as Kirby. But if you get the owl or the sparrow, so it's a rock.
The sparrow.
Yeah,
I
mean, you're a rock, so you're invincible while you're in this state. And the sparrow moves faster than Kirby does, and you're invincible. And then when you break out of the sparrow form, it explodes boulders in all directions and kills everything near you. So that's actually a pretty effective thing. And you fly. You actually fly with either the owl or the sparrow. So I think that one's pretty cool. And it's all shout outs. It's extra funny when you try to use it and then you get fish. Because the fish can't move. Fish can't move.
Even if you get the fish in one of the underwater levels, it still can't move. I think is a little unfair to the fish.
It is made of rock.
Rock.
That's true.
But the rock bird can fly, so I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Actually, yeah, I got nothing.
The rock slug can jump, but I thought that's a pretty cool one. I like fire plus electricity, which Kirby rubs. He rubs a stick or rubs some static electricity on his head.
It's a sheet of
metal on his head until his head bursts into flames, and then he runs on fire and is invincible while it's happening. Bomb plus rock is, I think, it's a cool power. It's the dynamite. And the dynamite might be the least effective power of any of them no, it's not the least effective. It's probably the second least effective because when you throw out the dynamite, it's a stick of dynamite that counts down, and then once it reaches the bottom of either if it hits something or it times out, it will explode and send rocks and explosion in all directions and basically wipe the screen. But Kirby will hurt himself with the dynamite. So you have to put on a tiny hard hat, and then you're immune to the damage from the dynamite. But if you throw the dynamite out and the timing is such that it hits something before you can get your little hard hat on, you'll kill yourself, which is annoying.
And there's actually one time where it's the best ability in the game. There's like a boss fight. I can't remember where it is, but like a bunch of little like droplets of water enemies come down, and that just like one shots the boss fight. It's that then it's really good, and you'd like happily take a couple ticks of damage.
I think that fire plus ice is kind of funny because Kirby just becomes an ice cube and then it melts. I don't even know if it can hurt anything.
It's probably the worst ability.
Yeah, it's bad.
In the game.
It's the worst ability in the game. Ice plus electricity equals refrigerator, which I feel is OP because the refrigerator shoots food and the food will damage enemies. But if you pick up the food, you heal yourself. So you have infinite health.
So you're kind of invincible.
You're pretty much invincible. Just the aesthetics of these powers. Like ice plus bomb, you become a snowman with a bomb for a head. Kirby is the bottom lump of the snowman, and the bomb is the top lump. And it's got a little hat, but the hat is a fuse in disguise. And then if you bump into anything, Kirby explodes, and then ice shoots up above you and will freeze anything above you, which is great. The bomb powers are great.
Ice plus stone turns you into a curling rock?
You become a curling rock. Snow plus snow is I think it's the only double combination power. Maybe bomb plus bomb that isn't just, your base power, but more. The ice one is, the base power is you shoot ice in both directions. The double, you become a snowball and will just, anything you touch gets rolled up in the snowball and will die. And then double bomb, instead of just throwing a bigger bomb or something, you shoot firecrackers out of your mouth. Fire plus bomb is kind of fun. You become a firework, and you can explode multiple times, shooting fireworks in all directions. This game has charm out the wazoo.
It does. So whenever I think about Kirby, I always think of him in sort of the Incredible Hulk sort of vibe that, you don't want to get Kirby angry.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like the anger, Kirby's just chilling until he gets mad and then he just wrecks.
Yeah, Kirby, it's not that you can defeat Kirby, it's that Kirby's allowing you to live.
And Kirby's allowing you to live in style because Kirby could adopt any of these sweet abilities, or Kirby could just vacuum you into the endless maw.
That is Kirby.
There's a whole... You want to talk about some dark matter, whatever is inside Kirby's stomach is some kind of black hole.
Yeah. I think it's a Majin Buu situation. Once you get sucked into Kirby, you just are trapped in there, and you're tiny, and he's stolen your powers. Yeah. Is there anything... I think the powers are 90% of this game, because many of the levels don't have a lot going on that's specifically novel. I did enjoy the few times where you run into the artist and they give you a little hint on what you need to do. And then if you do what they hint at, you press the right buttons or make the right shape, then you get a Crystal Shard. I think that's kind of cool. But
yeah, there are brief sections too where he plays DDD, which is, nice in its way, but it's one subsection of a level. So, I mean, there's really not that much. Do you ever play as Waddle
all of
Dee?
the minecart levels, Waddle Dee is in your minecart.
Right.
So those are kind of the little breaks in the regular action. I think it is kind of funny that this game basically has the same premise as Super Mario Galaxy. There's, you're on a planetoid. There's a princess or something from a far-off world who has come, who runs into the main character, and then you need to find a bunch of stars in order to restore some gigantic star. But, it's kind of funny as a prelude. And even down to, like, the worlds and their specific aesthetics, they even line up with Super Mario Galaxy in some ways. All roads lead to Planetoids.
Well, yeah, this is a good time to talk about this from, like, an archetypal game-building perspective. Like, it's true that all of these planets, and the planets are pretty easy to list. There is Planet Popstar, and I just checked up on this. Planet Popstar is the name of Kirby's world, but then like the country that he lives on is called Dreamland. It's like one of the
I want to go to
continents.
the other countries.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's the setting of the other Kirby games, so you can just look up what the other ones are. So there's Planet Popstar, there's Rock Star, there's Aqua Star, Neo Star, Shiver Star, Ripple Star, and Dark Star. Some of these are pretty obvious. Aqua Star is the water world, Rock Star, Stone world, Shiver Star, cold world, that kind of stuff. I think Neo Star is like the machine world,
Neo
like the
Star
factory
is
world.
like the Land Before Time, like jungle world.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah, with the vines that you jump across. Okay, but those are pretty much it. And yeah, they all sort of emulate one of the ability types being featured more than the others. There are seven, I guess, worlds available, but I don't think they all perfectly represent all the abilities. Like, there's no, like, bomb world, I think. There's not really, like a planet all devoted to just bomb ability. That'd be kind of chaotic, but awesome.
Yeah,
maybe?
there are some levels here and there that have more exploding things than normal.
And for the most part, I didn't see that much bias necessarily of which world contains which abilities. For the most part, they're all pretty readily available, which is cool. They didn't really pigeonhole you into one of the abilities based on what world you were in. But in general, I wanted to talk about using a game mechanic as a theme of a world. It's very common in other earlier video games. I'm talking stuff like Mega Man, where you can literally like pick which world you go to first and get that ability from that world. Even games that have, I guess, not necessarily an ability tied to it so much, but like a theme. Games like Metroid that have worlds like the lava zone, the ice zone, and you'll get some kind of ability there, but it's not necessarily so pigeonholed. It's like a Mega Man game. And even games like Legend of Zelda, where you go to an environment and pick up a new ability there. All these games kind of like fell into a similar model as that. And I think what this is leading up to is a conversation about games in this era being really mechanically focused. They were focusing on making really cool interactions with the world, really cool mechanics, and the narrative kind of took a back seat. We don't see that as much today, but I think it's interesting to look back on these games and say, like, what were some of these games' most successful features? And it was the fact that just throughout the entire game, they were just always fun. That was like the first and foremost.
Yeah, and I
thing.
think that these games, they drew on the natural world a little bit. Just, hey, here are these powers, these very basic, very understandable concepts, basic elements, fire, ice, lightning, earth, and we're going to, skew some worlds towards these elements. You've got your fire level, you've got a minecart level, you've got your ice level, and it's a very 1990s, I'd say, era of design. We're going to grab this thing, and that's going to be our...
Especially the minecart level, which I feel like has been underutilized in modern games. Like, put one in, Metal Gear Solid or something. I would have enjoyed it.
I'm actually not that much of a fan of minecart levels.
Really?
I mean, you see them, I think most commonly they show up in, like,
Donkey Kong.
Diddy Kong Country, that Donkey Kong Country.
There was a
and
new
stuff.
Donkey Kong.
Those are really
There was a
common.
new Donkey Kong Country, and it does have minecart levels. But I just feel like,
But
you know,
in
Hitman
general-
could use them, Assassin's Creed, Gears of War, minecart level,
I think
Uncharted.
everything should have one, really.
No, I kind of want to push back because these games are really about creativity and exploration, and those are levels that specifically say, "Hey, you're on railroad
Yeah.
tracks right now."
That's true.
So I don't.
Minecart
But-
tracks. But
Yeah,
You know, if you
minecart
and
tracks.
Garrus were in a minecart in Mass Effect, that'd be pretty good.
Only if the banter was really good and there was
Shepherd
sexual
jump.
tension.
Shepherd Duck.
Into my arms.
have you ever been in a minecart without sexual tension? I mean, every time I've ever been in one, it's sexually charged.
Another time where I think this is not necessarily minecart, but a part of a game that I love a lot, but probably could have done without, was in the Ratchet and Clank series. There was always rail grinding, which is
Cousin of
cool.
the
You know,
minecart.
I liked it. Cousin of the minecart is the rail grind, and they're not bad, but I feel like usually when you die, you have to like restart the whole rail, like you do in Ratchet and Clank for the most part. I think in Kirby you just take some damage and then you get like respawned or something. So that's a little more forgiving. But my general point about them limiting the creativity just in like a whole level is just like, oh, this level's basically just the minecart. You skip it if you do all the things right. Bye.
Yeah, I understand it. I think that makes sense. Like,
I do-
the minecart level it's not like the minecart levels in this game are that exciting. I just think that this is very clearly a mid-90s, early 2000s game, and it really dates it. The style of design and also some of these specific elements. Like, the D-to-D levels, you've got this heavy character who's basically just platforming, and you've got a hammer that allows you to break down walls. Like, there's these little injected gimmicks here and there, and you know, there are only a handful of enemies. Each enemy type, there's only maybe like 3 enemies of any given type that give you a specific power. Like, there's only 3 or 4 needle enemies, there's only 3 or 4 fire enemies, and they just repurpose these enemies over and over again. And then when you're collecting these specific shards, each level has up to 3 shards, and generally how you get them is there'll be 1 or 2 that are just platforming, like find them in level, and then there'll generally be 1 or 2 that could be locked behind a door,
Like
and
breakable.
you need a specific,
Yeah, like
you need a
breakable
specific
barrier.
power to break the barrier. Like, you know, it's green and black, which means you need to use the exploding ninja star to get it, or you know, it's yellow and brown, which means you need the yo-yo rock. But you know, there's nothing specifically difficult about that. It's just about getting the power and then coming back to the level and doing the thing.
So the railroad track makes that not so fun because there was almost always a crystal somewhere along that railroad track path, and a common theme of the railroad track, like minecart levels, is there's typically some verticality where you can like choose which track you're on, and if you're on the wrong one, you can like miss it, but you can't go backwards. You have to kind of just restart that level. That's the most annoying part for me.
So I want to bring up, you know, I love Kirby games just in general. I've played quite a few of them. And I think one feature that makes a Kirby game instantly, I'm going to say 35% better, you know, it's a serious calculation that I did, is the addition of what I will call a power museum.
Yes.
So it doesn't need to be, you know, there from the very beginning. It can be unlockable at some stage. But basically what the power museum is, and it's basically what it sounds like, right? You have an area of the game that has all the powers, and you just sort of jump into one and you then have that. You know, so that gives you a chance to play with them, to explore with them, and you don't have to sort of grind around to find whatever power it is you need. So I think that's one thing this game is lacking, especially when you have these double combos where you then have to find one enemy, keep it, find the other one, combo up, then leave if you have to take it somewhere else.
And if enemies are being real jerks, sometimes it can take, you know, multiple attempts to assemble the power you want, and then you actually have to leave the level you were in to go to the level that you want. It makes a lot of this game just busy work, you know? You know what you need to do, but you need to actually go find the power. You won't know what power you need until you get to the level and find it out. And then you just have to go back, you know, and then replay part of the level so that you can use it in the proper place. I found that this game the number one skill that this game tests is patience, and I don't mean that necessarily in the derisive, like, it's really testing my patience way. I mean literally, like, there's a bunch of times in this game where, you're not actually in danger unless you're trying to go too fast, in which case you are in danger. Like, there's a few segments where there are pistons and stuff that will squish Kirby if you get stuck, and then you'll just die instantly. But there'll be safe spots that you can kind of hide in. But if you try to run too fast, you'll get stuck and won't be able to get back to a safe zone. Or spots where enemies are going up and down, at a set interval. And if you're just trying to sprint through the level, you might, show up at the wrong time, and you'll get the down part of the interval. So if you just stop and wait, you're not in danger at all. But then you would need to stop. And so I would often just get killed because I was running too fast or doing too much.
How would you categorize Kirby as a genre? Like, I don't really think it's a platformer. Like, once your character can float, the idea that, like, this game's a difficult platformer sort of goes out the window. I think
it's an action platformer, but a very forgiving one. There's that little bit of combat with all the different powers, and there is some platforming. It's just very forgiving with the floaty jump. Like, I was able to I guess this is experience. I played this actually with a relative who's 5, and handed him the controller, and he was able to actually make some progress here and there, which I'm not saying, he died over and over and over again, and that's fine, but...
And I laughed.
I was like, you fool, I need to get through this game for a podcast. Come on, get it together. But as a 5-year-old, to be able to do anything in a platformer, like a Mario game, you won't be able to make any progress. Those games are pretty punishing. But this game is forgiving enough that even if you don't have any clue what you're doing, that was the first time he ever held a controller. And he was able to figure out how to play. So I think that really speaks well of Kirby's design, that someone with no experience can go in and at least find some fun.
Yeah, and if you think about, sort of where Kirby exists in the Nintendo mascot pantheon.
He's criminally underutilized.
Oh, 100%. But I think that's the niche he fills. Is like, he's just sweet, he's lovable, he's your introduction to gaming. And then, in some of his other iterations, things get a little bit more tough when you need to preserve those powers for, exploration to unlock new areas. But beyond that, Kirby's just, hey, you want to do a little platform and jump on in, give it a try.
Yeah. And I don't think there's much to talk about. Like, in terms of the bosses and specific sequences, the bosses are all fairly easy.
You get Wispy Woods, as you always must.
Wispy Woods, dead again. R.I.P. Wispy Woods. So what did you guys played the mini games as well?
Mm-hmm. I did not this go round, so I got through like the main story and didn't do a lot of extra stuff. But I did when I was a kid.
The mini games are solid. The hopping mini game is not that great. You basically hit a button that's either jump 2 spaces or jump 1 space, and sometimes there are obstacles and you want to jump over them. So that's not that great.
That game made a second debut in Pokemon Stadium, the first game.
It's basically a math problem that you're playing. The second one, you need to catch like apples and fruit and stuff in baskets, but you can do spin moves on fools to take their spot.
Yeah, the spin moves are pretty sweet. That one's pretty good. That one's not. It's the second best of the 3, I guess, which isn't great praise.
Yeah, and then solid. The third one is very clearly the best one. It is a checkerboard of death. 100%. So you're basically on a checkerboard with blocks, and you can shoot a blast in any given direction, and then every block that is hit by your blast will drop. And so you basically shoot in a straight line, and the goal is to catch opponents on your blocks and then drop the blocks out from under them. And as you reduce the number of players down, every person who's defeated causes the space that you're playing in to get reduced in area by 1, basically. So the outer ring of blocks will drop away, and then you get smaller and smaller spaces until there's only 1. And I think it's really cool.
So I think it's a great game. I'd also like, just because we're talking about this, to bring up a game we didn't play this week for the podcast. Cool. So if you guys played Bomberman 64,
Yes.
So how many multiplayer games of Bomberman 64 have you played versus actually playing the single-player
I
campaign?
played way more Bomberman.
I played primarily single player.
Really? I don't think
Yeah.
I've ever finished Bomberman single player, but I've played tons of Bomberman multiplayer. And I don't know why this Kirby game didn't get the same sort of expansion, maybe, that Bomberman multiplayer did. Because I think it has the same sort of
Yeah, I think the
potential.
checkerboard game, you could run some cash games of that. It's got some legs.
Oh, yeah.
Some mind games.
I guess.
Some power-ups, some different arenas, maybe, and you're there.
So anyone who wants to bite
I feel like there'd be like.
there's a,
I feel like that game could be. I don't know if I should say solvable, but like. I feel like it's got a really low competitive skill.
See, what you need is to make the characters slightly different. Like, you got one guy who his wave doesn't go the full length of the screen. It just goes like 2 blocks, but it's real fast. It causes the blocks to drop out real fast. So they're like real up close. Then you've got another character who goes full screen, but
I feel like nah, man. I feel like nah.
Billy feels like that.
Solid point.
I also feel like if you want that kind of experience, just play Lethal League.
That's what I was going to
instead.
say. I feel like this is Lethal League, except you're on a checkerboard and it's kind of Bomberman. Well, I don't have much.
Yeah, we're gonna play Lethal
We
League
are.
at some point. That's a podcast worthy game right there.
Yeah.
Some Lethal League.
You'll enjoy Lethal League, Pete. It's about some miscreants playing baseball, but a deadly version of baseball.
You
I'm
can't
already
just
on
tell
board.
them all about it. Like we gotta wait for the podcast
That's true.
episode someday.
So I don't have much else to talk about with Kirby 64. There's an encyclopedia of enemies. They're just pictures of enemies. That's kind of it. This game it's fun. Kirby can turn into a refrigerator and kill fools with food.
Yeah, what more do you
Yeah.
want, really? I mean,
What I'm primarily thinking about when I think of Kirby 64, the Crystal Shards, is going back to a time, sort of like an era, where I want to say games were simpler and also better, because I mean it kind of seems like that. Like they didn't have to be so complicated, but they captured our hearts. And I wonder, is it just that now we as grown-ups now have like just higher standards, so it takes a lot more to satisfy us? Or if these games just wouldn't, I mean, like, I guess that's true, but would these games not still be fun if a first-time gamer played them? I feel like a lot
is fun for first.
Yeah?
It is fun for first timers, but I wouldn't say that this game is like holds water over the long term. Like, playing this now, it's a pretty boring game. The combination of powers are cool. I wish that the levels demanded more of you. I wish there was a reason to use certain powers. Like, there are some powers that, in the abstract, seem useful, like Needle plus electricity. It causes you to become a lightning rod, and then just lightning strikes you from above, and it basically will kill anything above you. But there are almost no levels that are that vertical where you want to actually do that.
Mm-hmm.
There's also level like the fire plus Needle, you become an arrow and you shoot fire arrows, and it can shoot varying distances up into whatever direction you're facing. But there aren't levels that really are there's only like 1 or 2 levels that are diagonal like that, where you would actually want the fire arrow. There's just a whole bunch of powers that imply that they would be useful in certain situations or are more situational, but the game is not designed in such a way that you can have access to them when they are useful, or that the challenge is difficult enough that you would want the optimal power. You generally can slop through with no powers because the enemies aren't dangerous enough, and the game is forgiving enough, which is totally fine. I think that's a completely acceptable design, especially for who the target audience is, which I think Kirby games are largely targeted at younger kids to kind of be an introduction to platforming. Mm-hmm. But I would love if you took like literally these exact same designs and just ratcheted up the difficulty slightly and ratcheted up the complexity a little bit, and then it would hold my attention a lot more.
So
luckily for us, we did just kind of get that in the form of Kirby Star Allies, which was released just last month for the Nintendo Switch. But I think it doesn't have as focused gameplay as this Kirby game did. We still get more Kirby. It's just now they're like remixing it for today, which means it has to have a lot more bells and whistles, a lot more multiplayer interactivity, a lot more everything. Right. Have to just like take it to the nth degree.
Yeah, let me turn this into a bit. Phil, you seem to be going to sort of meta commentary direction, so let me jump in as well. I think part of the issue is that the market position that Kirby occupied has been cannibalized by more, let's say, casual mobile-style gaming. Right? Like what you would have went to a game like Kirby Crystal Shards to get, you now go to your iPhone, your iPad, and play those sorts of games to get instead.
Yeah, and I can see that. I just think that the central conceit of stealing powers, combining powers, that still holds up really well, even in 100%. This older game that has, it's not that demanding. It's not something that we would necessarily go out of our way to play if not for the podcast. But I just wish that they could bridge the gap between super casual, super new play and slightly more demanding play. Because I think that what Mario games do so well is that they hide their complexity. But the complexity is still there. Oftentimes there are coins that are more difficult to get. There are levels within levels that you might not be able to find if you aren't especially observant. And you can beat the game without seeing that difficulty. But in this Kirby game, like the thing that is off the beaten path generally are the Crystal Shards, and you need them to finish the game. And they are by necessity not that difficult to get. Or the challenges you need to overcome are slightly annoying. They're not challenging. They're just academic. So I just feel like you could ratchet this game up. Like earlier Kirby games have had that. There have been sections where you can find secret buttons that will unlock shortcuts, or segments where you can find secret cannons that will shoot you into other parts of the level that are more difficult or just feature secrets. But this game is not really interested in that.
Yeah, honestly, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror was a game a lot like that. Or no, I'm thinking of Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland.
Nightmare in Dreamland's an excellent game.
Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland, they had the Power Museum. They had more unlockables, a whole bunch of different areas. I think Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland for the Game Boy Advance might be the best Kirby game ever.
I think it's actually a reproduction of the Super Nintendo Kirby game, but
I think you might be right. Actually.
Kirby's Nightmare in Dreamland, like, it features the one true power, which is backdrop.
Oh yeah, when you get the martial arts bandana.
Backdrop. There are two martial arts bandana powers.
You like suplex a dude or something like that?
You can do all kinds of cool stuff. There's throw.
Throw's pretty solid. You just hurl dudes. You shoulder throw people into their doom. But backdrop is the one true power. You grab someone and then you can jump and just pile drive them. And man, that's a great power.
You can basically shoot Kamehamehas too.
Yeah, that game's great. We should play that.
Yeah, that game's great. You know what? Play that.
Okay, so that's the end of this episode of Deep Listens. Any final thoughts?
I would say this for me. There have been slightly better Kirby games before this one. There have been better games after this one, but this to me probably highlighted the best example of just like a standard staple of Kirby powers and a very clear linear level design that is the brand, like the hallmark of the 90s gameplay experience. Now, this game was released in 2000, so I think it should be still lumped in with that category. But it's a really classic example. I think there's a lot of academics to be discussed in Kirby 64 The Crystal Shards, which we did here to the best of our abilities. And the fact that other Kirby games have a sort of different gimmick, a different, different styles. This one to me is, I guess, the most like straightforward, distilled Kirby experience.
Pete, final thoughts.
I think, this game proves, as all Kirby games sort of prove, that the number of abilities is directly proportional to the enjoyment of the game. And this one, through its combinatorials,
whatever it is now,
combinatorics, I think, is the word.
I could just say combinations. Through its combinations, up and the higher you can get it, the better this game will be. It's just that, Kirby Nightmare and Dreamland happens
Sometimes
to be a better
more
one.
is more.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, combinatoric was that word that I was looking for. It's all that factorial math.
And I this is a delightful game. It's not that difficult. I wish there was a little bit more of it. I wish that, maybe there was an alternate world, like a level 8, where it got crazy or something. But it's fine. It's a fun game.
I would have wanted, and this is actually now sparking just one last point that I wanted to make. I would have wanted there to be like a certain threshold of crystals you needed to beat the game, not get all of them, and then like get something else for getting all of them, which is a pretty common game mechanic.
So
I'm
you're
thinking
saying
about
you want more unlockables, Billy.
I guess that's pretty common for me
What a
though.
surprise, yeah.
But like Mario 64 did that, and it came out before this, so that's a decent example, and in their universe. And then the other side was, I guess, more interactivity of the bonus stuff in the worlds. A great game that comes to mind that also came out before this on Nintendo was Banjo-Kazooie, where every level, had its theme, had its power you would get, but there was also like a minigame interaction and like a transformation that added a new layer of depth to the level, not as like a one-shot, like break a wall kind of thing.
Rare at the peak of its powers. So, Pete, it is your turn.
It is
Pick
my
your Kirby
pick.
Nightmare
So
Dreamland?
I decided, no, although it would have been a good pick. I decided to make a hard left turn from the sort of aesthetic that Kirby offers us. But this is a game it's a little older, but it's weirdly prescient in our modern times. And it's not too long. Well, I shouldn't say that. You can play through it once fairly quickly, although they're all alternate endings. So it's good as we come up on our endurance run. But an older game that's prescient now, we are going to play Papers, Please.
Ooh. That is a hard left turn.
That's what I said. Yeah, it's a very, very different game.
I've wanted to play Papers, Please for a while, but I have not played it. All right, we're going to fake communist Russia.
What? What?
Dun, 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 dun.
I mean, yeah, sure.
Let's do it.
That makes perfect sense.
All right. So after Kirby the 64, the Crystal Shards, time to go to an authoritarian state, y'all.
Yeah, I think this just makes perfect sense.
Yeah, what other game really could we have played other than
Of
this
course.
after Kirby?
So thank you, everybody. Thank you for listening. Remember, Community Endurance Run, fundraise.pencilsofpromise.org/GBCRVIII 8. Roman numeral 8. And remember to get in touch with the show, Deep Listens Pod, on Twitter, deeplistens.libs.com. Hit up our comment sections, and deeplistenspodcast@gmail.com. Thank you, Billy.
Thanks everybody for tuning in. Don't know exactly where we're going with the next game, but apparently through the authoritarian state, which is the only natural successor to a
Thank
Kirby
you, Pete.
game.
Always a pleasure, guys. Like Gino said, donate to the Community Endurance Run. It's a good cause. And tune in. We talk about Papers, Please. I think this one's going to get pretty deep.
Yes. All right. Till next time. Thank you, audience. Peace.